You're listening to the Fresh Hell podcast. Fresh Hell contains stories of a disturbing and often graphic nature and is intended for a mature audience. Please don't let your kids listen to this, or they might turn out like us.
My name is Michael Whelan, and I am the host of a podcast called Unresolved. In 2015, before the true crime podcasting wave really kicked off, I wanted to start a show that focused on not only the gory details, but the human stories at the center of every mystery. Because for every unsolved murder or baffling experience, there are multiple lives left without an answer. Since I started the podcast, I have tried to focus on unfinished stories, both big and small, to try and figure out why and how some of us are left without any resolution. I'm interested in learning about these unknown aspects of life, and I hope that you are too. Check out my podcast, Unresolved, on your podcast app of choice, or just stop by the show's website, unresolved.me, to learn more.
Hi, I'm Johanna from Vienna, Austria, and this is Fresh Hell. And you just heard the promo for Unresolved that's hosted by Michael Whelan, and he's covered a lot of fascinating and terrible stories, so give him a listen. Maybe his show will be a new favorite of yours. So welcome to another episode of Fresh Hell Podcast.
Yeah, welcome back, Hellions. We're your favorite international podcast, co-hosted by two women. But what really sets us apart from the other true crime podcasts with two women is the ease with which you can tell us apart. I'm Annie, with what's known in the biz as a very generic American accent, even though I live just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. And my beautiful co-host with the melodic accent of a Viennese songbird is, of course, Johanna, pronounced Johanna, not like Kool in the Gang song, Joanna. Do people sing that to you a lot?
People used to sing an Austrian song, well, not an Austrian, a German song named Joanna.
I don't know that. I
Why
know
would you?
What is it? Joanna. You know that one? It's so obnoxious. The video is annoying too. But yeah, it's really easy to tell us apart.
That's right. That's a good point. It's easy to tell who is who just from our accents. So you don't have to waste any time wondering who's talking. You can just relax and listen to terrible stories of murder.
Which is what we're all here for. By the way, I'm sorry if you hear a little bit of background noise today. I live about 10 miles from downtown Boston, but it sounds like there's a crop dusting derby happening in my backyard today. I don't know why. Also, we need new windows in this very old house, but we just built the garage mahal, so we can't afford windows. Okay, what do we have this week? Oh, Johanna, did you see somebody in our very fabulous Facebook group just called us modern day pen pals, and it's my new favorite thing.
Yes, I read that and it is spot on. Because some of you might not know yet, but Annie and I never met in real life.
That just, it seems crazy to me, honestly, doesn't it? Like, how have we never met? But fingers crossed, that's going to change in late fall or early winter this year. I'm very excited. We have a very long list of macabre tourist destinations to choose from. And we're going to finally get some pictures taken to use for the podcast, which is going to be a lot of fun. Lots of surprises coming.
I can't wait. Okay, but let's get to what we're all here for, the terrible, terrible stuff nightmares are made of.
I'm here for it. What do you have for us today?
Well, today I will be talking about another Austrian case, one that was considered to be one of the most gruesome cases in Austria. I think the perpetrator is still named one of the most violent criminals in Austria ever. So this week I will be telling you about the mass murderer Werner Kniesek and his horrible crimes.
I don't know this one at all. Are there any warnings for our listeners?
Well, it's a terrible story, but I'm almost afraid to say that it's the usual torture, murder, you know.
Ah, all right. I'm ready.
Werner Kniesek was born on 17th of November 1946 in Salzburg, so that was a little bit over a year after the Second World War had ended.
Oh, so he was born in the city of Salzburg, like Sound of Music Salzburg?
Yes. I don't know if I have mentioned it before, but Sound of Music was not very well known in Austria up until maybe the last 10 years. It still is not very famous here, but at least, you know, when you hear Sound of Music, you know that it has something to do with the von Trapp family. I mean, I own the movie, I know it.
Of course you do. I would expect that you would, but it's so surprising to me that Sound of Music isn't a thing in Austria. Doesn't it have the, record in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most successful movie of all time?
Yes, it does. The first time this movie was ever shown on Austrian television was in the year 2000, I think.
No.
Man, that's already 20 years ago, and it's so recent.
Oh no, that felt like yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
I read up on it, so all in all, it was only shown 2 more times since then, so that's 3 times in 20 years. And it was not well received on TV and neither in cinemas back in the day either. I think the reason is that there actually exist 2 German movies about the Trapp family, and they were wildly successful here. They are from the 50s. I guess so soon after the war, people might not have liked, a romanticized American version of an Austrian story.
Sure.
I'm not saying that the German version was not romanticized, but at least it was not full of, cultural inaccuracies. I mean, they sing of schnitzel with noodles, and I think Annie can tell you all.
Don't mess with her schnitzel. That's all I have to say about that.
Also, the German version had all the big German and Austrian acting stars of the time, and ultimately there might have been just simple issues with licenses that prevented the movie from being shown on TV here for such a long time. So yeah, now you know it's Sound of Music, not a thing here. Oh, and no, Edelweiss is not our national anthem. Thank you very much. It really has nothing to do with traditional Austrian folk music. That being said, I love the songs in Sound of Music, and I really quite like the movie.
If we ever visit the Alps, when we visit you, if we go to the Alps, I am doing the Julie Andrews spin. I'm going to make Paul record it in slow-mo. Yeah. It's a huge movie here, and I've been to the Von Trapp Family Lodge in Stowe, Vermont, which is beautiful. But I think that The Sound of Music is usually shown over and over again around New Year's. It's like the New Year's Eve movie. Hellions in the UK, is the New Year's movie in England still the original Poseidon Adventure? Because I know that was a thing. But yeah, Sound of Music, I used to always watch it until the Nazis showed up, and then I turn it off because it's a bummer. So is there a New Year's movie in Austria? Do you know what I mean? I think every country, I only realized lately, I think that every country might have their own thing that's a New Year's thing.
Well, we have a thing that is on TV every New Year's Eve, shortly after midnight, and it's called Dinner for One. It's weird. It's a sketch from the 1960s that was produced in Germany, but it is in English.
Oh, weird.
Lord knows why. I have no idea. I will see if I can find it on YouTube for a group, but it's a tradition here, yeah.
I love that. Yeah. So Hellions, we have a lot of listeners from all over the world. So please let us know what country you're from and what your New Year's Eve thing is, because that could be a fun discussion sometime. And I'm really curious about it now. So, all right, let's get back to the story.
Okay. So Werner Kniesek was born in 1946 in Salzburg, and he was born to a single mom, and he never got to know his dad. There are some rumors that he was the son of a US soldier who was stationed there after the Second World War. And it would make sense. So for our listeners who might not know that, obviously World War II ended in 1945, and until 1955 Austria was split up between the 4 occupation forces, so that's Russia, France, Great Britain and the US of A. So you guys. Vienna itself was split up 4 ways too, and my family, for example, we come from Niederösterreich and Burgenland, and that was the Russian zone. Styria and Carinthia was British zone, Tyrolia Vorarlberg was French, and Upper Austria and Salzburg was US. And if an Austrian citizen wanted to travel from one zone to another, they needed identity papers to do so, and those papers had to be translated not only, of course, in German, but also into English, French and Russian, and it needed a total of 11 stamps from all 4 occupation forces to be allowed to go from one Austrian state to the other.
Oh my God,
crazy.
That's a nightmare. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's for 10 years, yeah.
Wow.
The Austrian Independence Treaty was signed on 15th of May 1955, and since then Austria is neutral, more or less.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would make absolute sense that Werner Kniesek was the son of an US soldier. I saw a statistic that stated that from 1945 to 1955, around 30,000 children fathered by foreign soldiers were born. I'm not sure right now if it's just Austria or Austria-Germany. But yeah, that's a lot of kids.
There were a lot, yeah.
Yeah. And we should not forget that they were not only the result of consensual relationships, which of course also happened, but sometimes of rape. And
of course,
all the children were usually seen as children of the enemy, even though, of course, the occupation nations were officially not longer enemies. I think we can all imagine that this caused a lot of trauma in these families, and for some it is, to this day, still like a missing part of their family history.
Oh, absolutely. It has to be very difficult.
Okay, so there was a little bit of Austrian history there. Back to Werner Kniesek. Early on, he showed troubling signs of behavioral problems. He skipped school, he ran away from home repeatedly, and he acted out. I read that he even threatened to kill a classmate.
Oh boy.
In 1962, so when Werner was like 16 years old, his mother, who didn't know how to handle her son anymore, planned to have him rehomed. I think he was supposed to live in a, I don't know, would you call that group home?
Maybe, yeah. She just wanted him out of her house.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
That's a hard situation for everybody.
It is. It's true. So on 5th of June 1962, Werner Kniesek found out that he was about to be removed from his home, and he snapped. And he stabbed his mother with a kitchen knife. So he steals her money and he flees Austria, and he's heading towards Hamburg in the north of Germany.
He has a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And his mother, she survived?
Yes, fortunately, his mother survives the attack.
Okay.
Anyway, fun fact, another one.
I love them.
I don't know if you all know this. The Beatles, before they became the famous Beatles, before Ringo joined, and back then when Stuart Sutcliffe and Pete Best were still members of the Beatles, they started their career in Hamburg. That was back in 1960, I want to say. And in April of 1962, so only a couple of months before Werner Kniesek went there, they played in a club in Hamburg called Star Club. And it had opened just very shortly before. And this time the Beatles were already how we know them, you know, Paul, John, George.
Oh, Ringo.
Yeah, bingo.
I love it.
Okay, I promise, enough pub quiz trivia.
It's never enough. I love it.
So, 16-year-old Werner Kniesek, he flees to Hamburg, but he's arrested there pretty soon after and extradited back to Austria. And there he spends 2 years in a juvenile hall.
And that's for stabbing his mother, yeah.
Yeah. What can I tell you? Werner Kniesek did not turn his life around, and he did not leave prison as a rehabilitated person. He started a career as a burglar, and according to a source I found, he was sentenced several times during the next years. And then finally, for no apparent reason or with no real motive, he shot a 73-year-old woman.
Oh.
I don't know, I guess, and I could be absolutely wrong, maybe he tried to break into her home while she was there. Or he just wanted to kill someone. He later stated that he had felt an unbearable hatred against women from an early age.
Well, that's awful.
I just realized that it's not the first time that I do an Austrian case with somebody really hating women. I don't know what happened there in the 60s.
I think that's a pretty common thing though with a lot of murderers, isn't it?
It's
like
true.
just a really pathological misogyny. Yeah. They're usually cowards too, so.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So I read that he shot the woman like 3 times in the abdominal area, and the victim survived, but she had to suffer from the complications and the trauma, of course, for the rest of her life.
I can only imagine. So did they catch him? They knew it was him?
Yeah, I don't know exactly how they caught him or if it took them long. I think no. I think it was a pretty easy investigation. And Kniesek goes to prison and he's sentenced to 8.5 years. And in prison, he spends his time making some hard liquor or toilet wine or whatnot. And he makes quite some money selling it to his fellow inmates.
Oh, sweet, sweet toilet wine. Is it like Pruno? Is that what they call it? I think I looked up this stuff the last time we talked about toilet wine, and it's legitimately vile. It's like pieces of bread and, it's gross for the yeast. Hard pass.
So now we jump forward a few years and we are now in January of 1980, 15th of January 1980, and Werner Kniesek is almost done with his sentence, only some more weeks to go. And you all are gonna hate this right now because it's again kind of our law system that's failing here. He is granted a temporary release, 3 days out of prison to go and find a job preparing for his life out of prison.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't object to this policy for nonviolent offenders.
Exactly.
For nonviolent offenders, it makes so much sense, but not for violent offenders.
That's what we've been talking about in the Gladbeck hostage crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, Ugh. Especially since we know, like, he stabbed his mother and then he shot a woman. So it's not like this is a one-of thing. Like, this is a violent man.
Yep. Okay, so he gets his 3 days out of prison. He takes his toilet wine money and he leaves prison. And in Vienna, he buys a gas gun because what nobody knows is that Werner Kniesek, he has a plan. And this plan does not involve job interviews.
What's a gas gun?
I think it might be more known to you as an air gun, maybe, but in a pistol form.
A fake gun, a non-lethal weapon?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you don't know, you are fooled by it.
You would think it was real.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense.
We are going to take a quick break here before we get into the terrible, terrible stuff. For a quick word by today's sponsor, Best Fiends.
I just love Best Fiends so much. I just love it.
I know you do. What level are you now?
I think I'm currently stuck on level 690, and I have been for a few days.
I don't know. I thought you were at level 700 or something like this. Like, I know you're so far ahead of me.
Did I say? I might have said that. I have a sort of numerical dyslexia, so it's completely possible. Sometimes we actually have to do a ton of number conversions in researching for this podcast, especially when some of our episodes, like converting kilometers and miles and distances and things like that. So whenever I need a break from the math, and spoiler alert, I need a lot of breaks when I'm doing math, I play Best Fiends. It's my favorite. I've collected 26 fiends. They're amazing, and I love them. Yeah, it's my favorite game to play when I just want to relax.
I love the little bugs and the way you can train them. Every level is different, and it definitely never gets boring.
It really doesn't. It really doesn't. Engage your brain with fun puzzles and collect tons of cute characters. Trust me, with over 100 million downloads, this 5-star rated mobile puzzle game is a must-play.
Download Best Fiends free on the Apple App Store or Google Play.
That's friends without the R, Best Fiends.
All right. Now, are you ready for the rest of this case?
I'm honestly, I don't know, am I? All right. Yes, I'm ready. I feel like it's going to get really...
Oh, this is a bad one.
Bad now.
Walter Kniesek leaves prison for 3 days officially to find a job, but he has a way more sinister plan. He buys a gas pistol or an air gun, duct tape and gauze, and he puts all of it in a black briefcase, and the next morning he breaks into 2 mansions in Hitzing, which is a very fancy district in Vienna, you know, lots of old money, lots of mansions.
Nice.
But thank God, nobody's home. So he decides to go to one of Vienna's train stations. I would assume it was the Westbahnhof because that's where the trains going, the direction he takes are leaving. And he gets on a train to St. Pölten.
St. Pölten? Where is that?
So St. Pölten is nowadays the capital of Lower Austria. It's roughly 60 kilometers or like 37 miles west of Vienna. I didn't calculate it now. I just had to look it up and find it.
That's okay.
St. Pölten is nowadays the capital of Lower Austria, and it's roughly 60 kilometers or 37 miles west of Vienna. Back then, in the 1980s, I would assume that it would take you around 1 hour to get there by train. I think nowadays you can go there like in 27 minutes.
Oh, sure. Okay. So you said it is now the capital of Lower Austria, but it was not in 1980?
No, it only became the capital in 1986. So before that, Vienna was the capital of Lower Austria and also the capital of Austria and also the capital of Vienna. But we Lower Austrians did not like that. We needed our own capital.
Okay, so this is embarrassing, but I'm a little confused. I would not have thought that Austria was large enough to be divided into upper and lower regions. Sorry, geography is just massively... It's my weakness.
Okay, so we have 9 states, yeah?
Right.
Vienna, Lower Austria, Upper Austria, Styria, Carinthia, Burgenland, Salzburg, Tyrol, and Vorarlberg.
Okay, I get it now. I'm learning more every day. I bet a lot of people learned a lot just now with me because I knew you had the 9 states. We'd talked about that before, but I didn't realize Upper Austria and Lower Austria were states. I thought you had Upper Austria and Lower Austria, and then within them were the 9 states. So that makes a lot more sense now, because I think the country of Austria is about the size of the state of Maine, maybe? I think I looked it up when we were first chatting, and I could be completely wrong, but I mean, it's a big state.
Okay, so Kniesek takes his black briefcase, he gets on a train and he goes to St. Pölten, which is actually kind of weird. He doesn't know anybody in the city, he doesn't know his way around in the city. I read somewhere that he actually planned to go to Salzburg, which is the same direction, and he just left the train randomly in St. Pölten. And when he arrives there around 3 p.m., he gets into one of the cabs that is waiting in front of the train station. And Werner Kniesek introduces himself as a traveling salesman for carpets.
Who doesn't love a quality carpet, though? Am I right? They really do seem to play just such an important part in so many of our crimes. Not just the Austrian ones, just...
Well, we love a good rug to tie the room together, I guess.
Who doesn't? You need it, especially if you have dogs. Otherwise, they slide all over the place.
So the taxi driver doesn't have to think twice and he takes Werner Kniesek to the fancy residential area called Kupferbrunnberg. And Werner Kniesek has no idea where to go. He wanders around aimlessly and he rings doorbells. He rings the doorbell of the first house, nobody opens. Then he rings at another door and a woman opens the door and by her side, her dog. And Kniesek takes one look at the dog, turns around and walks away.
Thank dog.
Yeah, literally, because that probably saved her life.
Oh, yeah.
So he wanders around a while longer, peeping through windows, when suddenly he spots a man in a wheelchair on the first floor in one of the houses.
Oh, I don't like where this is going.
I know.
I know.
So this is where it all really turns bad.
Okay.
So the name of the man in the wheelchair was Walter Altreiter, and he was 26 years old and he was paralyzed since he was 3 years old, and he lived in the house with his mother Gertrude, who was 55, and his sister 24-year-old Ingrid. His father, Josef Altreiter, who had owned one of the biggest accounting firms in town, had died in 1969, so 11 years earlier, from a heart attack. The mother Gertrude had worked as a nurse until 1959, and Ingrid Altreiter had just moved back home. She was studying economy in Vienna, where she had lived in a dorm, but had returned home to live with her mother and her brother because the mother felt uneasy in the big house, all alone, just with Walter. Especially since they had just lost their watchdog a little while before. Ingrid was also planning her wedding to her fiancé, a Swedish dentist, that was supposed to take place only a couple of weeks later. All in all, the family Altreiter was a well-known and well-respected family in St. Pölten. Werner Kniesek didn't know any of this. He just saw a helpless man in a wheelchair and he saw his chance. Werner Kniesek found his way into the house, entered the room where Walter was in and started to threaten him with his gun. Walter told Kniesek that his mother and his sister were out shopping but would return home soon, and that a lodger was also living there but that she was visiting her family for a couple of days.
Oh, that was lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Werner Kniesek ties up Walter and then he waits for the two women to return home, which they do around 6 p.m. They find Kniesek waiting for them, he points his gun at them, forces them to sit down on a chair and ties them up. And then he announces that he will kill all three of them. He then undresses Ingrid and starts to torture her. All the while he keeps untying her and tying her back up again. He makes Mother Gertrude watch all the horrible details of Ingrid's ordeal, because he knows that this is the worst torture he can possibly put Gertrude through. Having to watch helplessly while he tortures her child.
The worst.
Yeah. Gertrude suffers from a heart disease, and when Werner Kniesek realizes that Gertrude is about to faint, he allows Ingrid to give the mother her heart medication. He also has Ingrid make some coffee for him, and then he forces her to sit down and have a cup with him before he continues his abuse.
This is it's unimaginable. So I'm assuming, did he just repeatedly sexually assault her? I mean, he really is a completely sadistic son of a bitch, isn't he, though? And just such a coward as well.
I would assume that it was also a sexual assault, but I found newspaper articles stating that no sexual attack took place.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that could be that there was just no penetration, or it could be that it's just, the conservative Austrian media during the 80s that would just not talk about this.
Sure.
I think it's safe to say that the whole assault did give him pleasure.
Yeah, it could be just the torturing somebody was all the sexual gratification he needed. He sounds just like a complete sadist. It's horrific.
Ingrid's fiancé called the house several times during the day, but nobody answered the phone. And around 8 p.m. he tries to reach Ingrid once more, and she finally answers the phone and tells him that she can't talk right now because she's in a hurry. And she also mentions that she won't be able to come and visit him in Germany, where he was working at the time, but that she will explain everything in a letter. And that's the last time he ever hears his fiancé's voice. We can all imagine that Werner Kniesek was standing behind her, threatening her with the gun.
It's just so sad.
The women plead with him, offer him money and other valuables, but these offers only enrage him more. And first he kills the family pet. And then around 11 p.m., Werner Kniesek strangles his first victim that day, 26-year-old Walter Altreiter. The two women have to watch, which gives him even more satisfaction.
He's a monster.
Then he continues to torture Ingrid, beats her, burns her with cigarette butts, and at 2 a.m. he kills Gertrude in front of her daughter, strangling her just like her son.
Awful.
He then takes Ingrid to the basement where he ties her up and continues his attacks, and around 5 a.m. her suffering finally comes to an end. Kniesek kills the young woman after almost 12 hours of torture, strangling her with an electric cord. He then takes the 3 bodies to the garage and puts them in the trunk of the family's Mercedes. Walter and Gertrude wrapped in a carpet, and on top of them the naked body of Ingrid. Then he goes back into the house, puts on leather gloves and cleans everything. Like, he doesn't leave the tiniest sign of what just had occurred here over the last 12 hours. The only thing he misses is the spot in the basement where he had tied up Ingrid, because that spot is no longer covered in dust.
Oh, see, that's how you'd have to look for a struggle in my house. It's just look for the places where there isn't dust, and that's, something went down there. There's no dust in this corner of the house. Oof, this is awful. This poor family.
It's so bad. Around 8 a.m., so that's the 17th of January 1980, he steps outside the mansion of the family Altreiter in St. Pölten, greets the neighbor, and opens him the gate to the garden, because the neighbor used to shovel snow for the family and came here that morning just to do that, like always.
Oh, wow.
And then he gets in the car and drives off, heading towards Salzburg. He even stops and asks a police officer either for directions or for a newspaper. The accounts differ here. But I think that shows once more how absolutely cold-blooded he was.
Oh, yeah.
In Karlstetten, which is a 10-minute drive northwest from St. Pölten, he stops for breakfast and he orders coffee and Leberkäse. Leberkäse is a very special kind of Austrian meatloaf. I think they also might have it in Bavaria, I'm not sure. It translates to liver cheese, but it is neither made of liver nor cheese. Unless you order Käseleberkäse, because that one has cheese in it. So there you go.
I'm so glad that you speak when we visit. You're going to spend all your time translating menus for me.
So he has coffee and Leberkäse, which is a weird combination, to be honest. And the waitress and the other guests find him a wee bit weird, because he seems to be very nervous, and he also keeps his leather gloves on the whole time.
That's weird.
So they note down his license plate, and after Werner Kniesek drives off, they inform the police of their strange encounter.
Yeah, he must have been acting very strange if they, noted down the license plate and called the police.
I mean, yeah.
Must have been.
This is the rural Austria in the early 80s, he was a stranger.
Yeah.
It's suspicious just being a stranger there.
That makes sense.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, I think he was also counting a larger amount of money.
Okay. Yeah, that seems odd then. With the gloves and
So the police checks the license plate and of course finds out who owns the car, and a police patrol is sent over to the house. They ring, but nobody answers. Neighbors tell them about a suspicious man who had been seen there this morning, and the police now checks the outside of the house more thoroughly, and they find a broken window at the back of the house, because this is where Kniesek had made his way into the house. Inside the house looks absolutely peaceful and undisturbed, and it gives almost no indication of anything sinister. They only find a half-full coffee pot and some mugs on the kitchen table, 2 fur coats on the sofa, and an open purse on the floor. Which is the only thing where you'd say, okay, that's a little bit weird.
Yeah.
And also the family is missing, which seems to be unusual, especially Walter Altreiter used to be home most of the time. The police even checks the family's vacation home, but they soon realize the family of 3 is indeed nowhere to be found.
I'm actually amazed that the authorities realized the family was missing so quickly. Do we know what he did with the wheelchair?
He used the wheelchair to transport the bodies out to the car.
Oh, smart.
But the wheelchair was in the house.
Okay.
Yeah, it's true now that you mention it, that also must have been suspicious to the police that the wheelchair was there. Yeah. But still, it's a pretty good job by the police, I have to say that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, agreed.
So they report the car is stolen and they start the manhunt. And around 11 p.m. the car is found parked in Salzburg, and it seems as if the trunk of the car is loaded with something heavy.
Riding low in the back.
Mm-hmm. And the murderer returns to the car and the police demands the car keys. Kniesek very calmly hands the key over while stating that, quote, I borrowed the car from a friend and I have no idea what's in the trunk, end quote.
I'm sure to the cops, it's like, you know those people in marching band, what are they, color guard, that just wave those giant fucking flags on the field? Like, yeah, just giant red flags all over the place. Nothing to see in the back of the car. I borrowed it from a friend. No idea what's back there.
I don't think there is anything more suspicious you could tell a police officer in that situation.
Right? Oh.
I mean,
yeah.
We all know what the police finds in the trunk, so at first all they see are blankets. But under them, they find Ingrid, and she's on top of her mother and her brother. Werner Kniesek is arrested on the spot.
Good.
And at first, he denies everything. But during his first night in his cell, he tries to commit suicide twice, but that's prevented by the police officers. And the next day, he finally confesses the murder of Gertrude, Walter, and Ingrid Altreiter. And he states that he had left prison already with a made-up plan to torture and kill someone, as he has felt this urge growing for a long time already. And he tells psychologists about horrible headaches in the forehead area, bright yellow flashes he sees, and a voice telling him to kill. But he also talks about a second voice he hears telling him not to do it. The psychological report talks, of course, also about his sadistic personality.
So sadistic.
The trial starts 3 months later, and on 4th of July 1980, he is sentenced to life in prison and subsequent preventative detention. After the verdict, Werner Kniesek states that the murders might not have happened if the psychiatrists would have listened to him back in 1972.
What does he mean by that?
Well, it looks as if he had written letters to the prison warden or the prison psychiatrist about his mental health. That was after he shot the woman, the older woman, yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, he had been ignored, and it makes this all the more infuriating because once more, as we said before, you have this violent offender who had attacked and hurt several people already, and he even asks for psychological help in prison. And not only is he being ignored, he also gets unsupervised 3-day leave before his sentence of only 8.5 years comes to an end. It's so infuriating, like seriously.
Yeah, that's, it's bad.
Another thing investigators agree on is that if Werner Kniesek would have just returned to prison after the 3 days, which it looks like that was his plan. That's why he cleaned up everything and hid the bodies and drove off with them.
Sure.
And if he would have done that, returned to prison after the 3 days, the crime probably would have never been solved. So it's pretty much all thanks to the people in the breakfast joint that this didn't happen.
I mean, that's amazing. I keep thinking about the people in that breakfast joint, though. Like, I just keep imagining, like, him shaping his meatloaf into a woman and then just stabbing it. Wow. Good for them. It's nice when things actually, when people get caught. You know, I mean, because so many stories we've told before, it's like, well, that was the first family he killed, the next family, and then we start on so I'm glad that he was caught as quickly as he was.
Well, he is now 74 years old and he is still in prison.
Good.
I read that around the year 2000, so 20 years after the murders, he tried to get cleared through psych evaluations, which would mean he could be released. But thank God that didn't happen.
Yeah, he needs to die in prison. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. No, there's lots of people with, obviously mental illness who can be helped and treated and are no risk to the public, but this man is not one of them.
Yeah. There's an Austrian movie from 1983 by director Gerald Kagel, and the movie is called Angst, so fear. And that one is based on Werner Kniesek and his horrible crimes. I think it's one of Gaspar Noé's favorite movies.
I don't know who Gaspar Noé is.
He's an Argentinian director, and he made one of my favorite movies, which is Enter the Void. He also made Irreversible with Monica Bellucci. You might have heard of that one. It's some heavy stuff.
Yeah. See, you are a cinephile. You know all the movies. But yeah, I tend to skip the heavy stuff, so that makes sense.
I will add a link to Angst's IMDb and to the trailer in the list of the sources that, like always, you will find them in our Facebook group. And I think this week also on our webpage already. One more thing, there really are not a whole bunch of photos for this case. There is kind of a mugshot of Werner Kniesek and like 3 portrait photos of the victims. So please don't expect a whole lot in our Facebook group this week.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. It's like you look through and some weeks we've got so many photos to share and then other weeks there's like one. And it's like, this is all we have. Yeah, that happens a lot.
So yeah.
Wow, that was great. I've never heard of that case. I never heard of that crime. I never heard of Werner Kniesek. Thanks. That was amazing.
It's a bad one.
It's terrible. Really terrible. But I'm glad. So he's got preventive detention now, right?
Yeah.
So he's imprisoned forever, probably.
Well, he could be, if psychiatrist thinks he is no longer a danger to society, he could get free at any time. As soon as the psychiatrist would say, yeah, okay.
The problem is, I don't think he will ever not be a danger to society.
Yeah.
And I think that the older he gets, the more dangerous he gets, almost. You know, just because the thing that bothers me the most about him is just what a absolute freaking coward he was, right? So like he went after an old lady.
Yeah.
He went after a young man in a wheelchair. Like he preyed upon people who were easier targets when he was young and fit. So there's no scenario in which I can't imagine as an old man, he's not killing old women. Yeah. I hope he never gets out. Yeah.
Yeah, he should never come free.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. You want me to go first with something good so
yes,
you can
please.
rest your voice for a minute?
Please.
My something good this week was that we went to see Fitz and the Tantrums. I don't know if you know the band. They sing, well, quite a few things. If you Google them, it's very happy, upbeat music. And they were amazing live. Last week was actually the anniversary of my friend April passing away. I spoke a little bit about that in our Halloween episode, but April loved going to see live music, and it's something we did a lot with her, and it's something that we keep doing. We kind of kept that tradition going. So it was really nice to just kind of get away for a night and have a good time. They were a really, really fun group live. So if you get a chance, I definitely recommend going to see them. How about you?
First of all, I love the tradition of you and Paul going to live shows for April's anniversary. Yeah.
It always reminds me of her.
My something good this week. I did spend a couple of days at my mom's because I looked at houses in the area. The whole house hunting is extremely frustrating for me right now. The way it works here is a bit different from what you are used to in the US. I already told Annie about the differences. Maybe I will talk about all that once we found a house. Maybe we'll make an episode about it for our Patreon. Who knows? But yeah, it's frustrating. But staying at my mom's was lovely. It's weird because growing up, I constantly did bump heads with my mom. We were just, we still are way too different. I'm more like my dad.
Same.
So I always got along great with my dad, yeah, still to this day. But with my mom, I struggled a lot. And it's lovely how much better it has gotten over the last 2 or 3 years. She became less judgy, and I think I became more mellow.
Good.
And now we're even looking for a house close to her. So there you go. That's how things can change. Yeah, and that's my something good this week.
I love that. I think that's amazing. And I think the mother-daughter relationships are often very complicated.
Yeah.
It's like fathers and sons, right? It's, super. I think that's pretty normal. I know your house search has been stressful, but I think I've told you many times, it took us over 2 years to find this house. We looked at hundreds and hundreds of houses. Just don't settle. And I know you're going to find something amazing. You know, we could start an entire new podcast just talking about all the weird shit that Paul and I found when we were house hunting. Honestly, like so bizarre.
I'm going to find something.
You're going to find something amazing. It's going to be great.
I would be fine with looking at houses. I can manage looking at houses, but here you have to really hunt them down as a buyer.
You really do.
Which is...
Yeah, you really do. So real quick for American listeners, they don't have buyer's agents, and almost everything is listed as a for sale by owner. That's all you really need to know as an American.
Especially in the rural areas where we are looking for.
Yeah, that's so hard. So hard.
Okay, what else do we have to tell you? We want to mention that next week is our 1-year anniversary of doing this podcast. It's so exciting.
I can't believe it.
I think we have a little giveaway planned on our Facebook group.
Take a look today, and we will have a post about a giveaway for a free t-shirt to celebrate our 1-year anniversary in our closed Facebook group. So please come join the Facebook group. It's a pretty great collection of people from all over the world, and win a free t-shirt.
Yeah, not only join our Facebook group, you can check out our homepage where you find all the links to our social media. Our homepage is www.freshhellpodcast.com. You find our Twitter, you find our Instagram, and you also find a link to our voicemail. You can leave us a voicemail message. We would be so happy to hear your voice.
Yeah, we love that. Absolutely. We are working on Patreon. We know that many of you have requested that. And so that is something that we are working on, and it will be coming soon, we promise. In the meantime, other ways to support us are, of course, you can purchase merchandise, and you'll find links to that on freshhellpodcast.com and in our Facebook group. You could also do us the very great favor of leaving us a review on iTunes if you are able to do that. That's tremendously helpful. Tell your friends about us.
Yes, and don't forget to say hi to your pets, all the pets.
Definitely. Shout out to Sally, who listens to us while she's grooming her very good boys and very good girls all day. We say hi to all the good boys and good girls out there.
I think that's it. I think that's it for this week.
All right. Great. Well, as always, if you are going through hell,
keep going. Tschüss.
See you next week.